The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question to the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is now in session. It is January 13th, 2025, and once again, we are going to talk about the situation within Ukraine. So first of all, let's look at the Kursk/Sumy front. Now, the reason why I now include Sumy, when talking about this area, is because the Russians have re-entered the Sumy Oblast from Kursk. The Russians so far have control over this forested area here, and there is a report that somewhere along the Belgrade region, like the border with Belgrade, that the Russians have entered Sumy from here. And there is also a report speculating, though it has not yet been completely confirmed yet, that the Russians have also entered the Sumy Oblast from the area near Nikolaevo Dorino, and are trying to take the village of Zarovka, and perhaps also the village of Vasilivka as well. But nothing has been 100% confirmed yet, though it wouldn't surprise me if the Russians are going to try to start something in Sumy, like in retaliation for what happened in Kursk, but they also want to encircle the Ukrainians that are within Suja at the moment. There is also some conflicting reports regarding the village of Makhanovka, and personally, the way I see things right now, I don't think the Russians have actually entered or taken the village of Makhanovka, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But rest assured, with the recent advances going on within the Kursk Oblast, the Russians are mostly advancing from the eastern direction here. I wouldn't be shocked if by February or so, we're going to start to see the proper battle for Suja take place. But I don't expect Kursk to get completely cleared out by the Russians until around spring. But anyway, I digress. Let's just wait for further news to confirm the reports. So, yeah, no changes so far in the Kharkiv region or Kharkov Oblast. Well, at least in this direction, that is, and also within the Zolivchiv area. But we can say for sure there are changes here. Now, Syriac, for some reason, has not really colored everything in this direction. But what we do know for sure is that the Russians have taken over at least most of the town of Dorichina. They have taken the town center of Dorichina, and Deep State has also put this entire area here under the gray zone, which likely means that the Russians have control over a majority of the town. Now, if the Russians are able to take control of Dorichina, basically this bridgehead that is on the right bank of Kharkiv region, like along the Oskar River, will become basically a major headache for the Ukrainians. Like, they won't be able to defend this area for much longer, especially if the Russians decided to do a counteroffensive from the bordering areas here, in which they would aim to retake everything they lost in September 2022. But time will tell what will happen, and there's even reports that the Russians have also taken the village of Kalinove here as well. It's destroyed by now, it literally doesn't exist, but it seems as if the Russians are trying to flank Kupiansk from the north, or perhaps, as I said, try to start a counteroffensive to regain everything they lost nearly 3 years ago. But we will see what will happen. No changes here, but we do have changes west of Ivanovka, or Ivanivka. Russians are about to enter the villages of Bilorivka and Kolodaizy. And if these villages are to be taken, the Russians will then be within striking distance of Liman. I think they would still have to take over Stavki and also Zarichny, which is this sizable village here. And then we can say for certain that the battle for Liman, like round 3, like Battle of Liman, will officially start. I don't think this is going to happen for at least another 1 to 2 more months. But rest assured, the Russians are definitely going to re-enter Liman at some point, and I honestly don't know if the Ukrainians can hold on like they did in 2022, because that battle for Liman didn't really last long. as all of you remember, and neither did the second battle of Liman. Next up, we also got reports that the Russians are advancing along the E40 road, which goes to Slavyansk. They have taken over a good chunk of Orikovo-Vasilivka, and it is now also confirmed that the Russians have taken most, if not all, of Hrihorivka. Russians have also, in the CHASIV YAR direction, have launched a counteroffensive to retake the industrial plant here and have successfully accomplished this right after they flanked the center part of CHASIV YAR from the north. And Ukrainian milibloggers are now reporting that CHASIV YAR is likely going to fall to Russia soon. Not very soon, but soon. This is for neutrality purposes. Russians have also begun a counteroffensive to retake these areas here and have successfully pulled it off so far and are nearing the village of Stupochki and are probably going to flank the remaining areas of CHASIV YAR from the south. In the city of Toretsk, the Russians have now taken control over pretty much most, if not the entire city of Toretsk. The Russians have pretty much now gained every single important area there is in Toretsk, including the residential area. So all these parts here are under Russian control, including these areas too, and also the southern district. But now all there is remaining is this village of Kramenetsky here, and that will be the ball game. The battle for Toretsk will be over, and it's probably going to be over in the next few days, if not right before Donald Trump's inauguration. And so that's pretty much a wrap for the city of Toretsk. I'm definitely going to announce it in the next Hague video, maybe like next week or so, which will be on Sunday. And also, once Toretsk falls, expect also Druzhba to fall too. Yeah, so expect it. I honestly don't think Dachny and Delivka are going to hold on too. So I think these areas are pretty much cooked. I think Toretsk and CHASIV YAR are going to fall around like a similar time frame. And, here's the thing. Toretsk is important, but CHASIV YAR is even more important considering its strategic high ground area. Once CHASIV YAR falls, then everything here is going to fall too. Like, the battle for these villages are not going to last that long. And within the next couple months or so, maybe by springtime, the Russians will be at the doorstep of Konstantinivka, which effectively starts perhaps the battle for Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, arguably the most vital battle in the whole Russo-Ukrainian war by far. And speaking of vital battles, the Russians are still advancing along the entire line towards Pokrovsk. First of all, we're going to talk about especially the areas that are south of it, like right outside of Kharkov. The Russians have reportedly taken full control over the village of Yantarny and have also started the battle for the town of Dachny as well, or village of Dachny, sorry. Deep State has also confirmed the complete capture of Kharkov, and it seems right now as if most, if not all of Shevchenko has fallen, along with its deposit of lithium as well. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but if I didn't, I apologize for that. Though Deep State has contested this area still for Ukrainians, like in favor of Ukrainians, that is, but nothing has really confirmed this 100% so far. And that is why Syriac has, at this moment, favored the situation in favor of the Russians. And also it appears that the Russians have also captured some strategic fortified areas outside of Andriivka, which should allow them to enter the village of Andriivka too. And once Andriivka is taken, then there is pretty much nothing stopping the Russians from entering Dnipropetrovsk. Russians have also reportedly advanced outside of Slavyanka and Pavlivka, and have also taken majority control over the village of Yasinove, and are also probably going to start the battle for Novoandriivka too, and Sribini. Russians have also advanced towards Nadivka, and are also contesting right now for the village of Uspenivka too. And if they also take this village, it will only further tighten their grip over the next village, which I'm going to talk about, and is probably one of the most vital villages along this entire line, which is the village of Udachne. Udachne is one of the last villages before Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, and if the Russians were to take Udachne, the Russians will then be only 2 kilometers away, or kilometers away, from the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. And there are now reliable reports by Deep State UA2 that the TO406 road has been cut by the Russians along with the railways. So this means that any supply towards Pokrovsk from the western direction has been partly cut. And all there is left is the E50 road. And once this is cut to, Pokrovsk is pretty much cooked. Like, that will be GG, well played. It will be literally over for Pokrovsk. The Russians have also taken majority control, if not complete control, over the village of Pischine and are about to start the battle for Zevrove. And if the Russians take this, then we can say for certain that the battle for Pokrovsk has started. And we all know at this point that the Ukrainians do not have much longer in this city because, as all of you know by now, and as I've said, the Russians are trying to take everything surrounding Pokrovsk, and maybe the Russians are going to advance north, like from here, and are also advancing towards this ring road too. In fact, there's even geolocations confirming that the Russians have already cut this road, which will put Pokrovsk in an even more difficult position. I'm expecting the battle for Pokrovsk at the longest to take around the same amount of time it took to take Bakhmut/Artyomovsk, which could be around like 4 or 5 months. But if the Russians are able to mostly encircle Pokrovsk, we can expect the battle to maybe last for only 1 to 2 months, which will result in a similar scenario as to what we saw in Selidovo. The Russians have also taken majority control of the southern villages, including the villages of Tachinsky, Vidoro, Zenia, and Zheline. They have not yet begun the push up north, but we can expect them to do that very soon. But yeah, so Pokrovsk is besieged from the south, partly now from the west, and is partly encircled from the east too. So this really leaves only the north as the only way to supply the city. And as far as I know, things are not really looking good. So yeah, with the Russians nearing Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, I even heard they're already beginning to dig up the entire region. Like, they know the Russians are on the way. They're coming. And speaking of Dnipropetrovsk, one of the last major villages before the region, besides Udachne, which is Velika Novosilka, is now even more tightly encircled. The Russians have further advanced down the, I think it's the 00509 road, and have increased their control over this road too. And after the fall of Niskuchne, which basically brings everything back to 2023, like before the infamous counteroffensive that failed for the Ukrainians, it is safe to say that Velika Novosilka is, it's quite baffling that they haven't called the troops to withdraw yet. And they should at this point if they want to save lives, or perhaps prevent more surrenderings on the ground. But yeah, so with all this being said, the Ukrainians are running out of time before Donald Trump's inauguration to really stabilize the situation, that is. There's even calls from the U.S. government to have the Ukrainian government literally draft dudes that are 18 to 25 years old, which is around my age range. And if they were to do that, it would be a political disaster for Zelensky, and it would be an admission that the Ukrainians have, in fact, lost more men than the Russians do. So yeah, Ukrainians are pretty cooked right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Russians not only enter Dnipropetrovsk by next month, but they start really making some gains that are just absolutely, like, unreversible. Like, it's going to get only further worse as time passes by. So, yeah. But anyway, folks, that's going to do it for today's video. Not too long as I feared it would be, but keep an eye out on the Dnipropetrovsk region, along with what's happening in Kharkiv. I don't know what's going to happen in the Sumy Oblast too, but if the Russians start a counteroffensive in Sumy, don't be shocked if they do that just to clear out Kursk, but also to do it just to get bigger leverage at the negotiating table, which I honestly doubt is ever going to happen because neither side wants to talk. No matter how many times Trump yaps about wanting to end the war in Ukraine, even though, as we know, the Gaza war might finally be coming to a close. But as I said, don't expect peace in the foreseeable future. So yeah. So I hope all of you have a great day, and I'll see you all next week. Have a good one.